Hi, greetings to Madam Salsia, the lecturer of Accounting Theory. We are from tutorial session B01B, and today our group will be presenting on the topic measurement issues and the theory behind the issues of MFRS 9 financial instrument.
Introduction of MFRS 9. My name is Tam Soo Chuan. I am the first presenter for this presentation. Now I will discuss about what is MFRS 9. MFRS 9 financial instrument was issued by the Malaysian Accounting Standard Board on 17th of November 2014, and MFRS 9 will be effective for financial period beginning on or after 1st of January 2018 with early application permitted. MFRS 9 establishes the requirements for recognizing and measuring financial assets, financial liabilities, and some contract to buy or sell non-financial items. This standard replaces MFRS 139 financial instrument, recognition and measurement. MFRS 9 replaces the existing MFRS 139 financial instrument, recognition and measurement from 1st of January 2018 and introduces changes in the following three phases: classification and measurement of financial assets and financial liabilities, impairment methodologies, and hedge accounting. These are the differences between MFRS 139 and MFRS 9. Phase 1. Classification and measurement of financial assets and financial liabilities. For the classification and measurement of financial liabilities, most of those requirements will carry forward unchanged from MFRS 139. However, the requirements related to the fair value option for financial liabilities were changed to address on credit risk. Those improvements respond to consistent feedback from users of financial statement. For the classification and measurement of financial assets, those amendments address a narrow range of application questions and introduce a fair value through other comprehensive income measurement category for particular simple debt instrument. The introduction of that third measurement category responded to feedback from interested parties. Under impairment approach of MFRS 9, it is no longer necessary for a credit event to have occurred before credit losses are recognized. Instead, an entity always accounts for expected credit losses and changes in those expected credit losses. In November 2013, the MASB added to MFRS 9 the requirement related to hedge accounting. This requirement aligns hedge accounting more closely with risk management, established a more principle-based approach to hedge accounting, and address inconsistencies and weaknesses in the hedge accounting model in MFRS 139. Why implement new standard? MFRS 139 financial instrument has been criticized as a rule-based standard which is complex and difficult to understand and apply. Besides, incurred loss model in MFRS 139 resulted in impairment loss being recognized too late or too little during the global financial crisis.
My name is Krishwani. For the first topic, MFRS 9 financial instrument, I am going to present about method of measurement. Under financial instrument, there are two methods of measurement which are initial measurement and subsequent measurement. Under initial measurement, financial assets and financial liabilities are measured at the transaction price, which fair value consideration given or received. Transaction costs such as fees and commission include in the initial measurement, except for instruments that accounted for at fair value through profit and loss. For those that are measured at fair value through profit or loss, the transaction costs directly attributable to the acquisition or issue are written off in the profit or loss immediately. For financial assets, add costs that directly attributable to the acquisition of asset to the amount initially recognized. For financial liabilities, deduct costs that directly related to the issue of debt from the amount of debt recognized initially. For financial instruments that carry an amortized cost, the transaction costs are included in the amortized costs are amortized to the profit and loss over life of instrument. Next, under subsequent measurement, financial asset measured at fair value through profit or loss or other comprehensive income, or financial asset measured at amortized cost. Loan and receivable and debt instrument measured at amortized cost. The amortized cost of a financial asset is the initial amount recognized in respect of the financial asset. The amortization of the financial asset is calculated by applying the effective interest method to spread the financial over the period of maturity. Financial liabilities measure at amortized cost using effective interest rate methods. Transfer that does not amount to derecognition measure at consideration received. Derivative liabilities measure at fair value through profit and loss, except for derivative liabilities that link to and must be delivered or settled by an equity fair value, cannot measure reliably. This measure at cost.
Hello everyone, I am Tan Ji Sheng. Next are presenting on measurement issues of MRS 9 financial instruments. Measurement issues will be arising in measurement issues in terms of technical changes, implementation issues, and potential implementation changes. Firstly, measurement issues in terms of technical changes will be further expanded into 5 aspects. Firstly, classifications and measurements. MRS 9 require entity to meet 2 conditions in order to classify financial instruments into financial assets and financial liability, which are business model and contractual cash flow characteristics. Due to the new requirement in accounting standards, measurement issues will be arisen, as in substantiating business objective of the financial assets as part of the entity business model test, and secondly, determine new conditions which are characteristics of cash flow arising from individuals' contracts and whether they represent solely payments of principal and interest, which are known as SPPI. As for measurements, entity will also face problems as in fair value fair valuations of unquoted equity instruments or derivative links to unquoted equity instruments where cost basis of measurements was previously permissible. There are new impairments model requires in MRS 9 also, and measurement issues will be arisen because different measurements model will be required for different items. For example, expected credit loss ECL models is implemented in order to calculate the allowance for credit losses by considering on a discounted basis the cash shortfalls for prescribed future periods and multiplying the shortfalls by the probabilities of each scenario occurring. And in this case, ECL is confused because it represents possible outcome weighted by probabilities of occurrence that are not necessarily expected nor lost. Moreover, new impairment model also cause some problems such as liquidating particular expected variables for the new accounting standards in developing methodologies and credit risk models, as well as incorporating within credit monitoring process and criteria for identifying significant changes in credit quality. Thirdly, measurement issues will be arisen in the new accounting requirement of hedge accounting also, as in identifying additional opportunity to apply hedge accounting to reduce earning volatilities and varying changes needed to existing hedge documentations. And fourth, MRS 9 require financial assets and financial instruments to be measured in terms of fair values. As a result, there will be limited inherence in measurements models of fair value of financial instruments. In this case, there will be limited inherent and possible inaccuracies in the assumptions and parameters required by the measurement models. This means that the estimated fair value of financial instruments does not exactly match quoted price or market price that will be based on transparent and deep markets. As a result, the measurement issues will be arisen as inaccuracies of fair value. Lastly, there will be other technical changes. For example, measurement issues will be arisen when entity requires to upgrade capabilities to support additional disclosures, for example, new impairments and hedge accounting requirements. Furthermore, measurement issues will be arisen also in order to evaluate transitioning provisions from MRS 139 to MRS 9 as practice available and impact on financials and disclosures. Lastly, company will also require to capture additional information to support its implementations. As a result, they require transformations of IT system processes and internal control. Besides technical changes, there will be implementations issues of new standards. Firstly, capitals and income volatility. Based on research, researchers expect that there will be an increase of at least 15% in total balance sheet allowance and expect more volatile income due to the new accounting standards. Secondly, significant implementations in terms of additional resources will be required also in order to anticipations of potential capital shocks. Next, shifting product lines. Financial instruments had to relook at their business models and product offerings. This caused entity to reconsider their product lines ups depending on direction, rentings, and guarantees. As a result, some products might become unprofitable. Thirdly, data and modeling. Historical and risk data is required under MRS 9 as compared to MRS 39. There will be necessary internal and external resources required to build the expected credit loss ECL models. Entity were concerned about the data requirements to support ECL modeling as they might have substantial data gaps in ECL estimations. In addition, implementation issues of new standards will be arisen in system infrastructures. In this case, MRS 9 require complicated calculations to be done within short time scales and using a large amount of data. This requires a robust and flexible system infrastructures. However, the preparations is proving tough with short-term solutions and do not always work with legacy systems. As a result, system infrastructures will adopt sticking passive approach that require a complex system infrastructures. Moreover, high cost implementations will be facing by MRS 9 also, especially on the system developments and the related consultancy systems. For example, 50 million ringgit will be required for Bank Islams to replace MRS 139 with MRS 9. In addition, the cost of implementations is highly unavoidable and fundamental to comply with the standards requirements. The cost This is because the cost goes far beyond transitions into ongoing operations processes, for example, forecasting, validations, and modeling that require specialized resources. Lastly, impact assessment will be another implementation issues of new standards. Day one assessments of financial impact will be phasings by entities, and this is the expenses they have and impact on a financial persistence that cannot be controlled. Worst come to worst, if a financial impacts goes to the bottom line, such as higher provisionings, this will cash down to the customers, and the whole supply chains will be affected. Lastly, this impact assessment will be also affect the subsequent financial reporting also. Lastly, measurement issues will also arise in terms of potential implementation changes. Firstly, changes to system and processes will be facing in order to facilitate the implementations of new accounting standards. These require assessment of data availability, modeling requirements, and potential refinements. Secondly, significant judgments required in assessing business model and expected credit loss. This may lead to potential overhauls of current investment and credit management strategies. Thirdly, MFRS 9 will also require greater disclosures in financial statements. Hence, there will be challenges between sufficiency of time for preparations of financial statements and accurate accuracies of reporting for the new accounting standards. In addition, in general, when there is a transfer from old accounting standards to a new accounting standards or amendment of old accounting standards to new accounting standards, there will be lack of expertise. In this case, professional accountants need training to apply MFRS 9 that replaced by MFRS 139. There are 4 changes in MFRS 9, which are classifications and measurements of financial assets, accounting for changes in on-credit list in financial liabilities, impairments, and hedge accountings. Moreover, in order to implement a new accounting standards, availability of skilled resources will be questioned. In order to cope with the technical requirements in the new accounting standards. In addition, demands will be enhanced for its skill sets in accountants and financial personnel. Other than that, financial instruments were also seeking mathematicians and statisticians to develop the risk management model required in the new accounting standards. Second last, stakeholder expectations will be another challenge also in order to managing stakeholders' expectations upfront and explanations of the impact and changes. Lastly, realignments will be facing for the implementations of MFRS 9 in terms of realignments of business strategies and KPI of employees, including retrainings of employees.
My name is Krishwani. For the second topic, I'm going to present the introduction of MFRS 13, Fair Value Measurement. Introduction. Fair value is a market-based measurement. For some assets and liabilities, observable market transaction or market information might be available or not available. The objective of a fair value measurement is to estimate the price at which an orderly transaction to sell the asset or to transfer the liability will take place between market participants at the measurement date under current market conditions. When a price for an identical asset or liability is not observable, an entity measures fair value using another valuation technique that maximizes the use of relevant observable input and minimizes the use of unobservable inputs.
I'm Tam Su Chuan. I will discuss about the measurement part of MFRS 13. MFRS 13 defines fair value as the price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between market participants at the measurement date. The unit of account to be employed for measuring fair value is not specified by MFRS 13, but is determined by the individual financial reporting standard. A unit of account is the single asset or liability or a group of asset or liabilities. The objective of a fair value measurement is to estimate the price at which an orderly transaction to sell the asset or to transfer the liability would take place between market participants at the measurement date under current market conditions. A fair value measurement requires any entity to determine all the following: the particular asset or liability that is the subject of the measurement. For a non-financial asset, the valuation premise that is appropriate for the measurement, the principal market for the asset or liability, the valuation technique appropriate for the measurement, considering the availability of the data with which to develop inputs and level of fair value hierarchy.
Hi, I'm Chu Ting Chi. So for my part, I will be presenting about measurement issue and theory regarding MFRS 13, which is based on the valuation approach. Let's start. So valuation technique is considered as a theory which individual or even company uses as a basis for the valuation of asset or even business. An entity is to use valuation techniques that are appropriate for the individual situation, given sufficient data are available, maximizing observable inputs and minimizing unobservable inputs. It may use more than one valuation techniques to measure fair value in a given situation. Any change of valuation technique is to be treated as a change of accounting estimates within the scopes of MFRS 108. So moving on, valuation techniques basically consists of three approaches, namely market approach, income approach, and cost approach. So we'll be talking about that in the following slides. So first thing will be market approach. Under the market approach, relevant information such as price generated by market transactions involving identical or comparable, that is similar assets and liability or even business, is used to determine the fair value. So basically it's about how the market perceives the value of an asset or even business. And the next approach will be income approach. The income approach uses valuation techniques to convert future, for example, cash flow or income and expenses to a single current that is discounted or presented or present value amount. It is determined on the basis of the value indicated by the current market expectations about those future amounts. And the last one will be cost approach. Under this approach, the valuation technique is used to determine the amount required to replace the service capacity of an asset, which is referred to as current replacement cost. So moving on, we'll be talking about measurement issues of those three approaches. So the issue regarding market approaches is the whole sector may be over or undervalued. There are too few comparable examples, and there might be chances that insufficient recent transactions are not existed in order for the valuation purpose. So the next one will be income approaches. Estimating the future cash is difficult at best, which requires some of the knowledge regarding of formulas to be used, or even how to interpret the results when it is being calculated. And the last thing will be estimating interest rates in the future is uncertain. So the last one will be cost approach. More relevant if the assets can be liquidated readily. Small firms are disadvantaged because small firms tend to have less fixed assets. And also service firms are difficult to value this way because service firms delivers their service in a human capital, in terms of human capital instead of fixed assets. And also growth rates in the high-tech firms are not included. So basically that's all for the first part of valuation techniques. Hi, I'm Chu Dingji. I will continue from the previous part, which is regarding the valuation techniques. So for now, I'll be talking about inputs in MFRS 13. Inputs. All the three valuation approaches discuss rely on inputs or assumptions market participants will use in pricing an asset or liability, as mentioned during the market approach previously. So inputs can be observable or unobservable. Observable inputs refers to inputs based on available market data that market participants would use to price an asset or liability. On the other hand, unobservable inputs are non-market data that are developed on the best available information that market participants will use. Basically, there are three levels or hierarchy of inputs that prioritize the inputs used to measure the fair value, namely will be level 1, level 2, and level 3. So start with level 1. The first level uses quoted price, which is unadjusted in active markets for identical assets or liabilities that the entity has access to at measurement date. The unadjusted quoted price of equity shares in the listed company is an example of level 1 input. Level 2 refers to inputs other than quoted prices included in level 1 that are observable directly or indirectly. Inputs in level 2 include quoted prices for similar assets and liability in an active market, quoted prices for similar assets and liability in a market that is not active, non-quoted prices that are observable, and inputs that are derived or corroborated by observable market data. For example, to measure the fair value of a building held for use, the price per square meter derived from observable market data from comparable buildings in similar locations may be used. So the last one will be level 3. Inputs that are not based on observable market data fall within level 3. True unobservable data are used. They must still reflect the assumptions that the market participants would use when pricing an asset or liability, including risk. For example, to measure fair value of a cash generating unit, an entity may use the financial forecast from cash flow developed using its own data. So basically, that's all from me. Thank you.